across religious lines, at a time of tension, at a time when there has been doubt and misunderstanding between East and West. The question for you is, at this hour, what message do you want to send the international world? Do you want to say that a terrorist movement, a movement that began its resort to suicide bombings in 1994, at the very moment of maximum hopefulness, at the very moment of the Oslo process, that you want to say that this group speaks for the people in this room? I think for you to do that would send a message about yourselves that is exactly the opposite message that all of the effort of this past week's work with the United Nations has been intended to defeat. There has been a spiral of destruction in this region beginning since World War II, with each decade seeing greater suffering than the last. The 1950s worse than the 1940s, the 1960s worse than the 1950s, and so on, through civil war in Lebanon, through the Iran-Iraq war, through the horrors in Algeria, and now the possibility of true bloodshed in Iraq. It is so important that this strategic region, home of people of such ability and talent, step back and speak for peace, for universal values against terrorism. And you send that message to the world through the medium of the British Broadcasting Corporation. You send that message to the world through your vote today. And I thank you.
David Frum, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to throw the whole issue open to the audience in a few minutes, so please have your questions ready. David Frum, there's no pleasing the United States, is it? You wanted democracy in the Middle East, you got a democratic vote. You didn't like dealing with Arafat, so you didn't want to deal with him. You don't like dealing with Hamas. When do you think the Palestinians are finally going to vote someone you like or are going to bother to speak to?
The United States absolutely accepts the reality of this election result. The challenge
and wants
now,
to undermine it, as we hear.
The challenge now is to ensure that there is a second election. Hamas is not an organization that accepts the principles of democracy. It has a very different kind of ideology.
It just espoused them. It went to the ballot box and submitted itself to the ballot and the vote of the Palestinian people.
Let us see whether it does it again. That is the challenge.
The US didn't mind talking to the IRA when it was blowing up the cabinet of your closest ally. But you don't want to speak to Hamas when they're fairly voted in
the United States
by the Palestinians.
Did not begin talking with the IRA until the British government went along with the idea. The British government, the ultimate protector of the liberties and freedom and security of the British people. They were engaged, and so the United States followed.
It was pleased to have fundraising for the IRA on the streets of the United States when they were blowing up the British cabinet? I don't think so. That was
a scandal and a disgrace. But it's also true right now that Hamas raises money.
But it shows double standards, doesn't it?
Well, the United States passed laws in 1994 and 1996 that made it a crime to raise money for terrorist organizations like Hamas, which is why Mr. Cohen has spent so many hours in courtroom on behalf of those people, because under American law since 1996, raising money for terrorists is a crime as well.
What do you want Fatah to do? What do you want Hamas to do, rather? Become like Fatah?
I don't think it is very probable that Hamas is going to change. Hamas is what Hamas is.
Your president thinks they will. President Bush said the other day he thought power would moderate them.
The president was expressing a hope. The president is an optimist, and that's his job to look on the bright side. But realistically, they are what they are, and they pose the threat that they pose, and not just to Israel, because Hamas does not have the power to destroy the state of Israel. What Hamas has the power to do is to destroy the peace of this region.
David Frum, thank you very much indeed. Gentleman up there.
I wanted to ask, to what extent is the political wing of Hamas independent of its militant actions? And also to how close can we draw the parallel between the political wing of Hamas and the IRA in its movement towards normalization and towards the mainstream?
Well, if the question is posed to me, I am not an expert on the demarcation line between the military and political wings of Hamas. And I really don't think it matters, because the Palestinian people overwhelmingly voted for Hamas. They voted for Hamas that has a political wing that provides social services, and they voted, in essence, for a military wing that has served as the National Guard of the occupied territories. What you do raise is a very interesting question, though. And that has to do with, there is a dramatic difference, and it really comes down to racial and religious and cultural superiority. In my country, we were enamored with the noble struggle of the IRA, which really wasn't about an occupation, but was about a religious battle within Belfast in the north. The battle in Palestine has nothing to do with Muslim and Jew. The battle in Palestine has to do with an occupation. There's really, at the bottom line, no parallel to the life and death struggle in Palestine, where the Palestinian people have spoken. There is no downside for the international community to say, okay, Hamas, we will give you a chance.
Okay, David Frum, come in.
I think Mr. Cohen has made a very important concession that everybody should keep in mind. There is this distinction between the civilian or the civil side of Hamas and the military is completely specious. They don't have international accounts. It is one and the same. That if you support one, you are supporting the other, as he said. It is also, and we know what that organization stands for, and that is the destruction of the State of Israel and presumably the deaths of the people living inside it. That is the motion that is the challenge to the honor of this House. Will you vote for that?
Do you admit the military wing of Hamas has done nothing for 13 months at all? They've agreed to a hudna while Israel has slaughtered Palestinians, 35 of them this past week, 22 of them women and children. Who is the terrorist right now?
Because Hamas's strategy